Okay, welcome to the Prophetic Outlook. I hope everything streams okay tonight. I hope we don't have any more technical issues. If you can take a second, if you can do the usual thing, if you can like, if you can share, if you can comment. I can see Julie's here, Sir Pierce the Veil is here, Sue is here, Kathy B is here, Jared, Coco Bear, C Blessed, Deborah, Sherry M, Sunday Lily. Um, guys, as you're coming on, Caterlin is here. Walks with a Lion is here. Guys, as you're coming on, make sure you say where you're coming in from. Make sure you keep chatting amongst yourselves as well. And you know the usual deal. If you've got questions in all caps. And the moderators, Caterlin, Sir Pierce the Veil, and others will grab hold of those and send them across to me. So we are going to talk about a lot of things tonight. And really, we had other plans for tonight, but we sort of just shifted those about a little bit. And I kind of want to take stock of things. And we called this tonight Why Plot. And it's a direct sort of take on Psalm 2. And it's kind of looking at what's happening in the world. Now, we've seen things like the online safety bill. You know, if you're not from the UK, you're probably not as you may be aware of it, but you're probably not sort of tuned into what is actually happening. So the online safety bill was initially, like most bills, brought about for the idea of, well, it's for your safety, it's for protecting those who are vulnerable. But really, if you look at it, there is censorship happening in certain forms, in certain ways, that there's restriction happening in terms of if you take a certain political stance, maybe you're conservative, maybe you're leaning to more traditional values, and as that's the case, you're starting to see censorship under this online safety bill. Now, I remember talking, I think it was to Tom Hughes about 2 years ago about this online safety bill, and it's taken that time to get full implementation of it, and it's come under the Labour government. So this did start under the Conservative government, but it's the Labour government that have really ran with this. And as they brought this in, it has coincided with what we've seen as political unrest in the country and in the nation, political unrest around the world. And if there's political unrest, certainly if you take the UK as an example, one of the things that we're noticing is the governments do not like you to differ from their narrative. And we saw as well today that Keir Starmer's narrative is now to say that the UK will support a Palestinian state, will call for a Palestinian state. Can I just say quite openly, I am in the UK, but I do not support a Palestinian state. So, Keir Starmer, you do not represent me. Now, does that get me censored? It probably will, right? It probably will lead to some sort of censorship. And this is the thing, and we've got to be prepared for this. We've seen these censorship elements already at play. Let me just see if I've got the right thing here. Let me actually throw this up first. I've said this on Sunday. If you can, and if you're in the UK, actually go on to this petition. And we've seen this petition now. That's old numbers. It's much bigger than that now. But we've seen this petition sort of pick up steam. And this is for the repeal of this bill. So we've seen that already what you're getting. And it's quite interesting if you look at what's happening. People are using the likes of X, and they're maybe reporting the protests. So there's certain protests breaking out all around the UK, again, in terms of migration. But what is happening is there's a censorship cover to this, and there's a restriction put upon these that says that we need to verify your age in order for you to view this. Now, how do they verify your age? Well, this is showing you a plan of B that this will need to be and will be integrated with the digital IDs. And the digital IDs we know are already in place, but this is going from, I said this on Sunday, from soft rollout to coerced rollout. And all of this is happening. And it seems to be, I don't know about you, it seems to be there's an agenda at play when it comes to the elites, those in power, that it doesn't seem to matter what the public say. It doesn't seem to matter if there's public outcry. It's a case of they'll not show this on any media source. They'll bury the story. Take, for instance, the slaughter of Druze and Christians in Syria right now. Now, this is effectively, it's not just genocide, it's horrific what is actually happening. It's the embodiment of evil. And yet, you're not getting it put out there on mainstream sources. Why not? Because it's not popular to the narrative. And it seems to me that it doesn't, like I said this for some time, I believe democracy is dead, but I believe an agenda is at play. And we're going to talk about this tonight with Sam too. We're going to talk about it in terms of everything that's happening in the world right now. You've seen that Cambodia and Thailand are at odds again, even though yesterday there was this brokered peace deal with Donald Trump, but they're back at odds together again. And I believe because we're coming into a time of complete and utter tumultuous activity, and there is an agenda at play to bring the world into this chaotic system that provokes a rebuilding moment. Now, I believe the rebuilding is already taking place, but I believe that it's provoking us to accept this rebuild that's happening. This new, I can't say the certain word because I get a tag straight away on YouTube, but a certain three-letter word, a three-letter phrase, something rhymes with blue bird border, right? Yeah, so you get what I'm saying, hopefully. But if I say that on YouTube, I automatically get a tag, and we start to get restricted on this. Now, the good thing is, and I will say this about YouTube, YouTube are standing against and trying to take the UK government to court. I think it's YouTube and Wikipedia are trying to resist this online safety bill. Whether that plays out, whether that actually happens, what happens from that, I'm not 100% sure. But, we'll see. Now, the thing is that, again, it's about restricting sources. They say it's for one reason, but to protect people, but it's actually about restricting news, restricting what's happening. For instance, today in London, there was a mass knife attack. I think 2 fatalities from what I heard. It might have changed by now. Others were injured. And again, as far as I can see, maybe you've seen differently, but a media crackdown on this. They won't talk about who the attacker was. They won't reveal any sources. They won't reveal any details. Yet, from the activities last year, and from the whole instance that sort of provoked the riots with the murder of the little girls, they said they would never do that again, that they would be open and transparent. Well, there's not open transparency as far as I can see. So all of this to say that things are going in one direction. Hit 1 if you think things are going in one direction. And this is the thing, this is not to say that the elites or those who follow maybe a Luciferian agenda or a secular agenda to come against the truth of the Word of God. It's not saying that they're in control. God is in control of the timing. God is in control of everything. But sometimes God will just let the grip go and let people take themselves to the nth degree, and then he'll say, right, okay, now you see. And I think that he's letting the grip go on lawlessness, maybe because the church has become complacent, maybe because corporately, globally, the church is complacent, and as such is not restraining and acting like the restrainer. So with that being said, you've seen, let me see if I've got this right. You also seen this. The UN International Conference on Peaceful Settlement of Palestine and a Two-State Solution has been going on, and we know what France said, we know what Emmanuel Macron said. Both Emmanuel Macron and Mohammed bin Salman have been praised by Hamas. Now, if you're ever in that position where you're being praised by Hamas, a death cult, then I think you probably need to reassess which side of the aisle you're on. Like you think we're dealing with, and we're talking, and I'll bring up Psalm 2 in just a second, right? But we're talking about this tonight, and we're talking about the state of the world and the plotting and the agendas of those in secret societies, of those in dark corners and dark rooms, and those in open gatherings like the United Nations, like NATO, those who are gathering together for an agenda. And we're noticing that, like, I don't know, put one, or if you agree with me here, are you noticing that the world is clamoring, coming to a tumultuous clamor of one voice, and that one voice seems to be anti-Israel. That one voice seems to be anti-moralistic framework. That one voice seems to be anti-Judeo-Christian principles. That's what I see. Because you look at Israel as the center here, and you look at what is going on, and you even trace back to what those who are openly, vocally against Israel have said, such as Hamas, right? So if we talk about the rhetoric that has came out of Hamas today have said that apparently there's reports coming out by Palestinian authorities that Hamas are overjoyed that Israel had to capitulate in terms of allowing aid in without any movement from Hamas on the subject. So without Hamas committing to not attacking the aid trucks, not committing to not killing civilians, Israel just had to capitulate. And as they capitulated, Hamas are rubbing their hands and they're gleeful, according to Palestinian reports. At the same time, I was looking today and I was thinking, if you go back to 2024, July 2024, um, Ahmed Abadi, right, gave an interview for Anatar newspaper saying that Hamas, if they have the opportunity, he's basically Hamas representative in Lebanon. He has said they will do October 7th again and again and again. And he's been very open with this, and so have so many political leaders of so many political leaders in Hamas, so many political leaders who support Hamas, that they are actually supportive of the plotting. Now, I don't want to go too far down this road. It's not I'm not talking about Hamas specifically tonight, nor am I talking specifically about Israel. I'm talking about the strategies that are at play right here, and seeing those strategies. And as we see those strategies, are we aware of those? Can we counter those? What we do as Christians? How do we stand in these days, right? So Psalm 2, and we're going to look at verse 1. So we start here. Now I know this isn't Bible study, but I think if we look at Psalm 2, this is talking about the season that we're living in. And again, I need a blind here to cut out the natural light because it's just whitewashing me here. But if you can put up with the bad lighting for a little bit, that's okay. The weather will it's Northern Ireland. The weather will change every 5 minutes. So it says, "Why do nations rage, and the people plot a vain thing?" Now I think we have to go into the original language, if that's okay with you, to actually garner what is happening here and how this plays to end times. So the first phrase that we get there, the first thing is why. Now the word why is lama. It's an emphatic why. It's not like, why'd you do that? It's, why on earth would you ever consider such an avenue, such a way of doing things? Why? Just please explain to me, because your methods are lunacy. Lama is used in the phrase of is used in at the cross by Jesus when he cries out, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. My God, why have you forsaken me? It's an emphatic why. Now, then it goes on, why do the nations rage? Now, the nations here, that's Goyim. Okay, so this is the nations that describe Gentile nations or non-Jewish nations. So why do the non-Jewish, why do the Gentile nations, why do the unbelieving nations rage? Well, I think the answer is there in Scripture. So, what this is kind of a rhetorical question posed by the Spirit, right? Posed by the Holy Spirit. Why, lama, do the goyim ragash? Why do the nations, the Gentile nations that are devoid and resistant to God, rage? Now, the reason is clear, in my opinion. If you take the cosmic geography that the Bible tells us about in Psalm 82 and Deuteronomy 32, verse 8, at the Genesis 6 incident and the Genesis 11 incident. And what I'm talking about here is that according to Scripture, we know that B'nai Ha-Elohim, right, the sons of God. Now, not the sons of God like the beloved one and only Son of God, Jesus Christ. These are talking about, as we would be called, sons of God. The B'nai Ha-Elohim is reflective of the spirit realm. So, the likes of what we would see in Christianity as angels, but we're talking about the angelic, the principalities, the powers, right? Why do they, remember, these nations, the Goyim, rage? Well, the reason they rage is because who is in control of them? Deuteronomy 32 verse 8 tells us that the B'nai Ha-Elohim, the sons of God, were given authority or dominion. This is what Paul talks about, over the borders of men. And that is likened to the nations. So if we go to Genesis chapter 10, we get the table of nations. And in fact, there are two sort of representatives of the number of nations within the Bible. There's the number 70 and the number 72. And the reason is in Hebraic custom, they represent totality. Now, there's more than 72 nations, but it represents totality. And when you start to see this, you start to see that everything in the Bible, from beginning to the end, it's a battle, it's a war between those who are submitted to God, between those who in the Old Testament operate under a concealed Jesus Christ, in the New Testament operate under a revealed Jesus Christ, but are submitted to him, and to the rest of the nations that rebel against him and profane God, rebel against God. And there's this continual cosmic battle going on. And this cosmic battle is a play, when we talk about in terms of physicality, between those of God and all of the other nations. Now, if we talk about that in terms of actual nations, what we are talking about are a time that is prophesied in Zechariah 12, in which the nations will come against Israel. Does this make sense, guys? Hit one if this makes sense, please. Let me just know that everybody's on board with this, because I'm just trying to lay it. Oh, I'm not trying to do that. I'm just trying to, hi Vindog, I'm just trying to lay a foundation. So the cosmic geography setting tells you that the let's say the principalities, that's a better answer to who they are. The B'nai Ha-Elohim, the sons of God, have rule, dominion over the nations. So when we say Lama, why, emphatically why, do these Goyim, do these secular nations that are not of God, ragash, rage? Now, why? It's because there's been this cosmic battle going on. And we know, according to Isaiah 34, that the closer we get to the end, the more this battle intensifies. Now, what I mean by this, let me just remove the scripture for a second, right? What I mean by this is that in Isaiah chapter 34, it tells us that, I think it's verse 4. In fact, let me turn there. It'll be the easiest way to do it. Isaiah 34 gives us hints at the timing, but also tells us what exactly is going on. So if we looked at verse 12 onward, we would get a list of animals. Now, these animals are not animals. They are representative of that which lies in the wilderness. Jesus tells us that which lies in the wilderness. Matthew 12, verses 42 to 45 tells us that the dry places, the wilderness, is for the demonic, right? We get jackals, ostriches, wild beasts, wild goats, excuse me. We get the night creature, we get the arrow snake, we get hawks. Now, each one of those represent fallen deities, or deities that are representative of other cultures, but really they're reflective of the B'nai Ha-Elohim, the fallen angelic, right? So you've got jackals, that would be Anubis if we were talking about Egyptian. If we stay with Egyptian, ostriches is Mat. Wild beasts, if we went to the Greek, that's Artemis. Wild goats, that's the satyr. The night creature, Sumerian, we've got Lilith, or Lilith Fahad, the terror of the night. Arrow snake would be the ninth. Hawks would be Horus. They all represent different deities. Now, in Isaiah 34, and I'm just telling you this, I may lose you, but please stay with me if you can, right? This is just a background. If you look at the title of your Bible, it should say Judgment on the Nations. And what it's talking about is a time that will come in the future. This is talking about the Great Tribulation, the judgment on the nations, otherwise personified as Jacob's trouble. So the purpose of the tribulation is to turn Jacob, Israel, from its ways, but it's embodied in a tribulation that every single nation under the sun will feel. But the purpose of it is to get Israel to repent and come back to him. And what we see here is the title is Judgment on the Nations, right? Let me see, verse 2, for the indignation of the Lord is against all nations, and his fury against all their armies. He has utterly destroyed them. He has given them over to slaughter. Talking about the timeline of the Great Tribulation. Now, if we skip down to verse 4, it tells you that this is synonymous with those who were given dominion over those nations, aka the B'nai Ha-Elohim, right? Verse 4, all the host of heaven shall be dissolved, and the heavens shall be rolled up like a scroll, and their host shall fall down. And that is talking about the heavenly host, those who have rebelled against God. That is given a picture of the fallen watchers that we get in Genesis 6, those who fell as well, if it's a different incursion with Hasatan, the Satan, right? And it even goes on further to describe it, because I believe that God knows that we're kind of moronic, so he paints the picture and he makes it obvious for us. He says, all the host shall fall down as the leaf falls from the vine. Right, well, when's that? Right, well, what about this? And as the fruit falls from a fig tree. Well, the reason the fig tree is used there is because it's representative of what? The fig tree generation. Now, again, people differ and people think that, well, I don't like to say that this is the fig tree generation. I happen to hold to that. I believe that Isaiah 34 points to it, and it shows you that there's a synonymous judgment that comes upon the fallen angels and mankind at the same time. So if we go back to Psalm 2, now this is why I'm just trying to break down that I believe there is an agenda, there are things at play right now, and we'll get to some of them, but I need to set this up. I'll get to some of the things that are going on in the world, and I'll show you that these are strategies, these are targets, these are things that are coming into play by the fallen angels and those nations that are submitted to that will. Those nations that will rage against God's beloved in terms of Israel, and also in terms of the attack and the strategies against the church, like the online safety bill, like what we have over here coming in that is going through another reading called the respect orders, that you can face imprisonment if you break a respect order by being too loud, being too opinionated, and speaking in a public place, right? So why Lama do the Goyim Ragash rage. So the rage there goes to the heart of the matter, in the sense that they're not just raging, it's talking about thunder. It's talking like they're raging to the point of a clamorous sound, right? Isaiah 13 tells us this, that in terms of the people coming against Israel, the nations coming against Israel, they come up with this tumultuous sound, like what we're hearing coming out of the UN, like what we're hearing coming out of Europe, all across Europe, this turning from Israel, this complete and utter amnesia about October 7th, this complete and utter amnesia about the terror attacks that have been conducted by these organizations, such as Hamas, such as Hezbollah, that have gone past the Middle East and around the world. We know, for instance, that Hezbollah were directly involved with training the new IRA for here. So the Irish Republican Army were trained by Hezbollah, sponsored by Iran. So does that mean that, oh, well, maybe that goes to a little bit to show Ireland's approach to being anti-Israel themselves, because those who supported that, those who supported the Irish Republican Army, well, they could go, well, they trained us. It's showing you that there's an agenda at play, and I want to get to this agenda. So this is important for me, right? This is, am I losing everybody in this? Just let me know if you're getting what I'm saying. Let me know that you're getting it, right? Because I want to go into this. I don't want to spend too much time setting it up, but I want to go into it a little bit, right? So if we go, right, Lama, that emphatic Y, the Goyim, why did they make this thunderous sound, this rage, right? And the people. Now, the people is Amim. Now, this is a word that is not used throughout the Bible to describe the people. It is used in a couple of places, and Psalm 2 is one of those main places, right? And it's interesting because when you go into the etymology of the word and when you start to break down what it actually means, it's not just talking about the people, like the masses. So we often read that and we go, why do the nations rage and all the people? And everybody sort of adds that in, plot of vain thing. It is not talking about the masses. The word amim, right, it has this connotation of the in crowd. And the reason it has this connotation of the in crowd is from the verb right, which is basically two mems. So you got mem. So as we would say it, the m and the m. This verb that is contained within the word amim, people. Now this verb is used in different parts of the Bible to relate to a process of making secrets known to the in crowd. So that's actually the terminal, that's actually the description of that verb that is contained within the word for people here. So it's not people as we would normally use people in Hebrew, it's amim, and it is describing not just people but an in crowd, but it's also describing a process. It comes from a verb that describes a process of making secrets known to the in crowd. Now, this is talking then how secret societies come in, esoteric societies that are behind the scenes pulling strings. You don't believe me? Well, think about the United Nations, right? The United Nations, who took the teachings of Alice A. Bailey, who was a theosophist, and a theosophist is basically, regardless of what modern day theosophical society will say, theosophists are basically Luciferian. They come from the root of Madame Blavatsky. She was the main, she was kind of like the first one, who really sort of garnered this when she published her magazine Lucifer. They saw Lucifer as the real God. They were Gnostic in their belief, and the theosophy agenda was passed down through secret societies. So the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn embraced this. Thelema embraced this. All of these different secret societies started to embrace the teachings of theosophy. And Alice A. Bailey was high up. She was like one of the main ladies in this. Her and her husband, actually, who was a Freemason. And these individuals, they had strategy, they had a plan, right? So Alice A. Bailey, we know she wrote tenets on how a new order, I have to say, be careful what I say, let's say a new world, a world more ready to be free from Judeo-Christian principles and free for man to become like gods themselves, how that would be possible. And how it was possible, she believed, was teaching the youth, teaching the children. So UNESCO adopted Alice A. Bailey's teachings. Even if you look at the United Nations themselves, now we talked about this before. Hey, Bubba, United Nations themselves in the UN Plaza in New York, they used to have the Theosophical Society, used to have, under Alice A. Bailey, who formed Lucius Trust, used to have their headquarters there. It initially was at number 666, but then apparently that was too transparent, so they moved it, I think, to like 69 or 619, something like that. But even if you go into the UN, you've got the meditation room, and the meditation room, I spoke to Billy Crone about this, it's just Luciferian and it's theosophical. It's Alice A. Bailey's teachings just ingrained in that area. And this is what the world leaders, the United Nations, are taking their spiritual influence from. So if you go back to that picture of Deuteronomy 32:8, and you see that these spirits have dominion over the nations, and then you look at this, why do the nations ragesh? Why do the goyim, the secular nations that are devoid of following God, that are opposed to God's people Israel, why did they ragesh? Why did they thunder? Why did they come to a clamorous sound? Well, it's not just the nations, it's the amim, the people, and the amim, the root verb of that, telling you that these are people who are going through a process of divulging secret knowledge to the in crowd. And this is the teachings of Gnosticism passed all the way through, that is opposed to Christianity, that has come under Gnosticism, in my opinion, is Luciferianism dressed up, right? It comes through the lineage of the ages all the way down, right? You know, we go back to Genesis chapter 4 and we see the first signs of idolatry under Enosh, son of Seth, where it says that, and they will call upon the name of the Lord. Well, the word there in the Hebrew is hekel. That's where we get the word hekel from. It means they profane the name of the Lord. It doesn't mean that they're calling on God. It means that they profane the name of the Lord. And what we know that they did was they started calling other things the name of God. This was a Gnostic line that passed all the way through the ages. And whenever the church was kind of doing well, you know, evangelizing or whatever, then what you would see is this knowledge, this esoteric knowledge, got passed on through secret societies. And these secret societies, whether it's the Bilderberg Group, whether it's the Club of Rome, whatever it is, they're behind the scenes affecting policy. Now, this is what I want to get into, and I'm going to go. Are we okay to do a little bit of conspiracy theory? Right? If you don't like, I'm going to mention a conspiracy theory that is not verified, but it is widespread among certain communities. I'm not saying I put weight in it, but I think at least some derivative of it exists. The people plot in vain, plot a vain thing, right? I'll get to the center of this, right? So let me just bring this up in just a second. So what we know is that with amim, the verb mim relates to making secrets known to the in crowd. The term describes the secret thing made clear. It is also associated, that same verb is in the Thummim and the Urim. Now, do we know what the Thummim and the Urim are? They were part of the breastplate of the high priest, right? So you had the breastplate of the priest, and you had all the different stones, and you had the Urim and you had the Thummim. Now, these two stones contain the same verb that is used in amim, the people here, and it is not talking about the masses, it's talking about the in crowd, the kind of elite, right? And when it's talking about that if you take the combination of these words and you look at what Urim and Thummim were, they weren't just part of the breastplate, they were also used when Israel were messing up, they were used for divination. They were used for trying to see what was ahead of them. So whenever Israel wanted to see what was coming, or people wanted to see what was coming and wanted to be devoid of a relationship with God, they sought the process and not the personal relationship. So amim, people, the people described here, the in crowd, those of secret knowledge, with the same root verb mim, that same verb that is found in the Urim and the Thummim, that secret knowledge through divination. Well, this brings us to this, and I'm going to throw it up and you can just tell me if you've heard of it, right? Has anybody heard of Project Looking Glass? Now I'm going to go back to comments, so let me know if you have heard of Project Looking Glass. Where are my comments? There we go. Um, so Project Looking Glass, if you're not aware of it, now there are different things. So there's Operation Looking Glass, which is a very open operation that is found in naval records and so on, right? But there's Project Looking Glass, and came from um, certain ufologists that believe that they've been very open and saying they've read the documentation on this. The theory is, right, now whether this is true or not, I'm not putting any weight in that, but what I am saying, I do believe a version of it is already at play, and I'll get to that. So Project Looking Glass is this theory that about 50 years ago, there was, well, it's a bit more than 50 years ago now, that there was, let's say, otherworldly technology that allowed for the opening of wormholes, not for individuals to travel through wormholes, but for the point of gazing into wormholes in the terms of being able to. So the way this is phrased is they could see possibilities and possible outcomes. So this is apparently, I'm not saying there's weight in this, right? But with Project Looking Glass, the belief is that they could see that certain agencies around the world and certain, let's say, in crowd and meme type people were able to perceive what was coming through some sort of fallen technology, and they were able to perceive not one timeline but many different timelines and perceive what was the possible outcome. Okay, what was the possible outcome? And the belief is this started to shape world policy. And the further belief that has come off this is that by, I think it was around 2012, something like that, there was a convergence that happened. That, now again, I'm not saying that this is real, but I'll get to my version of where I see there's certainly weight in it. They believe that by 2012 there was convergence, that there is no longer different outcomes or different timelines possible. Everything is converged onto one timeline. Like we've passed the Rubicon, like we've gone past the point of no return, and everything is headed in one direction. 2030, everything is headed in one direction, right? Like I said, this is what they believe. Now, remember, we do not support divination, but it doesn't mean that divination has not been used in the past and won't be used in the future. It has been, and it is of demonic and intent and demonic structure. But excuse me. But with us, we stand under God, and we know that we follow the Spirit of God. So this is we're talking about the counter in crowd, the Amim, who plot against the things of God. So Project Looking Glass, there's loads of information on this. There's documentaries on this and all of that. But like I said, they believe. Have I got this? Hold on. They believe everything is going in the same direction, right? And since, let's say, in the last sort of 10 plus years, maybe 13 years, right, they believe we've got to a point of no return, that everything's heading in one direction. And what you've seen off this is, I guess, different things come to the fore. We have seen the elites, the Amim, the people in control, be very open about their defying God and God's will. Like if we take the European Parliament and we see that the European Parliament is based on an artist's rendition of how the Tower of Babel looks, then you can pretty much gather without much intellectual thought of the direction that those institutions want to take the world in. Or what about if we go to the likes of Kazakhstan and we see this? So Kazakhstan, by the way, is not some sort of you know, dirt poor third world country in that sense. It's got its rich and it's got richness, and it's got this pyramid which it's the what's it called, the Palace of Peace or the Peace Palace or whatever. This is in the capital of Kazakhstan, where they believe world religions will unite or have been uniting. This is the whole process of these meetings, these globalist agenda meetings, where they're saying world religions will unite and call for peace and human fraternity. We saw that under the Fraternity of Brotherhood as well, with the late Pope Francis. And when we're starting to see these things, it's hard not to go, well, they're all singing off the same hymn sheet. Now, are they singing off the same hymn sheet because they have been reading from the same information source? If there is something like Project Looking Glass, let's say a fallen watcher agenda that comes to the play at or comes to the fore at end times, then are they just going, right, well, this is where we're at and this is what's coming and we're going to get ourselves in the right position for this? Let me just share it, right? First Enoch 10:12 talks about the imprisonment of the fallen angels, right? Now remember, the fallen angels are those above these nations according to Isaiah 34. Now, the imprisonment is detailed as a time frame, so the sentence is detailed in First Enoch 10:12. Now, I will preface this: First Enoch is not a biblical book. It is not God breathed. It is an intertestamental book that is quoted in the Bible, so I give it the weight of history. Some maybe don't, but I give it the weight of history because if it's mentioned in the Bible, it's not God breathed, but it does have a historical content that can be gleaned upon. So First Enoch 10:12 says that the sentence that these fallen angels were given was 70 generations. Right now, the average generation that we see in biblical terms, and this would be 70 years. So 70 times 70, 4,900 years. Now, if we go back to when we believe that, certainly if we look at Enoch, Enoch was said to have had, he was talking with the Nephilim, he was aware of the Watchers at the time. And so if we take it in terms of that, right, Enoch, we don't have exact dating, but we would say anywhere between the 3040s to about 3017 BC was the time of Enoch. Now, obviously, it would go longer than that, but I'm talking about the end whenever Enoch was translated. So if we add on 4,900 years to that, we get to the 20th century. We get somewhere around maybe 1917 or somewhere in the 1940s. Now we could think about two things that happened then. 1917, the Balfour Declaration. 1948, the establishment of Israel. Right? The start of the fig tree generation, where the fallen watchers that are mentioned in Isaiah 34 start to realize judgment's coming upon the nations, judgment's coming upon them. So what can they do? Now, I'm not saying that there's weight in Project Looking Glass, but what can we do? Well, we can equip the people to change the framework of society, take them away from Judeo-Christian principles, take them away from seeking God, and get to a generation that Friedrich Nietzsche talked about in terms of God being dead. Now, God is not dead, but he's talking about society getting rid of God. And this is the plan that we've certainly seen in action. And I believe that one of the things that we've seen, and we see this in the agendas. So let me explain, right? If we take some of the end time watcher goals, right? Let's say we're calling them that end time watcher goals, because that is why the nations plot against God, plot against God's people. Well, let's take one for instance. Well, the Hebrew word for watcher found of the Aramaic word in Daniel chapter 4 verse 17 is ear, right? In English it would be IYR, ear. Now that is also the same name given to the word for city or walled enclosure. Now I'm just asking, and you can tell me, is there an agenda in this age to bring maybe confined enclosures, cities reduced to the point that they are watched, that they are controlled. 15-minute cities, maybe C40 cities, whatever you want to call them. Well, I believe that's an end time goal. That's an end time watcher agenda at play. Let me know if you agree, right? So the Hebrew word is ear. I'll type it out for you, right? Okay, and the Hebrew word is ear, and it's also the Aramaic word, and it's the word for city, but it's also the word for watcher. And then what we see come to the fore at this time, at this age, as we're getting closer to the crescendo, closer to the time of tribulation, one of the things that we see, the plan to bring cities into a smaller enclosure to make them more controllable, to control travel, to control your ability to commerce. Even if you go into the goals of the C40 cities, which we've done time and time again, you look at the ridiculousness about them. You know that 16 grams of meat per person, right? Now you'd eat more than that in the meal, but 16 grams of meat per person, 3 changes of clothes per person per year. And then you think, well, what has the open elite Amin crowd talked about through the World Economic Forum? That by 2030, you won't even own the clothes on your back. You will rent clothes. And how do they bring that to the fore? Under the term 15-minute a year, 15-minute cities or watcher. I don't know what you think, or if we even bring it back, right? The end time watcher goal certainly is facilitated by different technology, like the likes of the online safety bill. Because if the online safety bill it has to be, and you've seen this within days of it being enacted, right? You've seen that, like I said earlier, the whole symbol comes up, the screen becomes blank, and there's a warning that we have to verify your age. Well, how do we verify your age? Through digital IDs. In other words, this is all going to the ear, this is all going to the watcher, this is all going to the city, that you can be continually watched, continually controlled. This is end time goals at play. You know, if we, and one of the other sides of that is the continued change of the paradigm, right? You look at things right now. During the times of the Watchers, man was now at the point, if we go back to Genesis 6, man was at the point where Hamas, right, violence had come to the fore, covered the world, but at the same time, man was starting to believe that under these entities that they could become more than men themselves. And so these entities were beginning to be worshipped. And one of the personifications of this that we believe that happened was with Nimrod. So Nimrod, we know, according to the language and the historicity around Nimrod, he became a Gibborim. Now, Gibborim means a mighty man, but it also is referenced as another form of a Nephilim, right? Another form of a descendant of a watcher. Now, how he went from being a man to a Gibborim, how he went from a man to something more than a man, is conjecture, right? Some have suggested that he got involved with watcher magic. Some have suggested, and I think I would go down this route, that he went and he at Babylon, right, at Babel, which in the original language is Babalu, which means gate of the gods, that he, as they were building this tower to the gate of the gods to have communion with these fallen angels, he somehow submitted to one of these, or completely was possessed by one of these, and he became something that put fear into other men. Well, this will be repeated in these days, but now it's being repeated in a way that we've got to keep our eyes open for it, right? Remember, when we're looking at things in the ancient world, it is all qualified under the term magic, right? But magic is science concealed. Science is magic revealed, right? So science is just the explanation of things that you didn't understand, which would be the magic. So when we look at this now and we look at how things are happening to come to the fore now, we're seeing, I shared this last week, an individual in China who had ALS, unable to communicate, now with a brain implant communicating. It is the integration of technology to take man from being man to more than man. It's falling into Nietzsche's claims that mankind, is not an end time destination but a rope. And this all dates back to when? Genesis chapter 3. So Nietzsche says it's a rope between what man is and what man will become, the Superman, right? And what did Henry Kissinger say? When did he die? Last year or the year before? Henry Kissinger, when he died, said that this is the era of the Superman. Now, that's not talking about Clark Kent or Kal-El or whatever. That is talking about the Superman in terms of they believe that they can make man more than man. And you think, well, what kind of nonsense? Are they just going down this road because they don't believe Genesis 3 and that they don't take any sort of reflection on that, and they think that they've got that pride? Yes, but it's it's more than that, right? You look at the roots of theosophy and you look at Madame Blavatsky. Madame Blavatsky split society up and existence from creation till now up into 7 races. And according to her Luciferian belief, we are currently, and have been for the last probably 150 years, at the Aryan race, where the Aryan race is the pinnacle of things. That is according to her. That is nonsense, but that is according to her. This is where Hitler picked this up, right? Because he was part of the Thule Society, which took on the theosophical belief and ran with it. And it became not just theosophy, but Ariosophy under Heinrich Himmler. And they take this and they run with this. And it's the idea of becoming more than man. It's because the Aryan race, according to Madame Blavatsky, was the 5th race, but not the end. The 6th race, 6th root race to come, would be when man becomes more spiritual, more spiritually enlightened, and according to her, out of the confines of Judeo-Christian belief. So breaking free from Judeo-Christian belief. Have you seen society do that? I have. I've seen that. I walked into a shop earlier, and a guy who's normally lovely with me, I was wearing my baseball cap, which is says Jesus Saves on it, and he didn't say hello, didn't do anything, just put his head down and says, "There's your change." Boom, gone. Didn't want to talk to me because I had Jesus Saves, because that becomes so unpopular to society. That was a goal and a plan that was foresaw by Blavatsky, but has been enacted through all of these societies. Now, the 7th race, the pinnacle, according to her, of human evolution is when man stops being man and starts being more than man, going back to the lie of the Nahish, the lie of the serpent in the Garden of Eden, and the idea that you can become something more. Well, this is what we see at play. So when you ask yourself, why do the nations rage? They're raging because they look at Israel. They look at Israel and they say, look, those people have been, every time they're attacked, every time the world comes against them, every time that whatever Holocaust is happening, or they're pushed down or persecuted, they seem to come to the fore. And they made, look, if you look at Israel itself, Mark Twain called Israel, when he visited, just a desert, a wasteland of nothingness. And instead, what these people have done, because of the hand of God upon them, not because they are living a righteous life, and not because they are living a religious life, and not because they are submitted to Him, but because God is always keeping His promises, He has blessed them to make fruitful that which was not fruitful, a fulfillment of Isaiah 66, a fulfillment of prophecy. Well, this upsets the other nations. This upsets the secular. This upsets those above the secular, the principalities. And it upsets them knowing that they want to come against these people. So if you were, like, I think about it like children, right? I have 5 kids. If I were to turn to one of my kids and say, "You're my favorite," it would enrage the other four. Now, I don't have favorites, but this is what's happening in the world right now. And it's talking not specifically about the nations in this terms, but talking about the B'nai Ha Elohim. They are enraged. They rebelled against God. Psalm 82 says that their rule over man was wicked. But as they rebelled against God, they're now, just like Joseph's brothers, they're now angry when they see the prosperity and the blessing of God upon a people. So why do they plot a vain thing? I think it's starting to become obvious. Now, even if you take this word vain, right? This word vain in Hebrew is rik. It is also associated with another term of vain that you will know, tohu. So if we go to Genesis 1, in Genesis 1, it says the earth was without form and void, right? That word is also vain, without form and void. It's tohu. Tohu also doesn't, according to Isaiah 45 verse 18, doesn't just describe a place of nothingness. It describes a term of chaos. So you can read it like this. Why do the Goyim, Lama the Goyim, Ragesh, why did they rage and thunder and come to a clamorous a crescendo of a voice against these people? At the Amim, and the Amim, the secret, those who are plotting in secret, those who are of esoteric knowledge, whether it's through looking ahead and trying to discern what's coming, why do they plot a vain, chaotic thing? Because they can't stand God's blessing upon a people. And that doesn't just go for Israel, that goes for the church. That goes for, it's upon the national identity of Israel, but it's also upon the church. That the church and those who hold to the Judeo-Christian, those who hold to the Christian principles of the Bible, those who hold to every word, line, precept, and tenet, will become a target for those who don't. I don't know if you've noticed this, that sometimes you don't have to see horns and a tail to know somebody is demonically manifesting in front of you. Sometimes you just walk down the street. Sometimes you talk to them. Sometimes you say, God bless. Sometimes you say, Jesus loves you. I remember I got punched on the street because I said Jesus is the Son of God. Now, the thing is it wasn't a hard punch and it didn't warrant a response, so I can leave that there. But I think, when you're starting to look at what is happening around the world, there is an agenda at play. When I said about this, just look at this again, right? So this is the Palace of Peace. Now they have in this 200 seats. 200 seats for delegates around the world of religious background, world religions, to come and to meet and discuss a future a uniting of all religions coming together. They meet, and I've heard people say this, and I don't really sort of buy into this. I think some people are looking for things there. Because they meet in Kazakhstan, in the capital of Kazakhstan, which is Astana. People are pointing out that that is an anagram of Satan. I think that's just a bit of a reach. But I think that when you start to see that there's the connotation of how many seats around the table, 200, how many angels fell with Shemiah and Azazel, 200 in Genesis 6. I think it's hard not to see that the agenda is at play. And they are plotting. They are, the word plotting is sahak, and it means not just plotting, but scornfully, mockingly coming against those who are of God. Have you been mocked for your faith? Have you been ridiculed for, have people come against you because you believe in Jesus? Have people said, well, you're thick, you're this, that, and the other because you believe, and whatever. I think that it's consistent. It's a time. It's representative of the age that we live in, where things are like internet intellectual snobbery, where people say that you believe in God, you're automatically disqualified from a rational, logical conversation. Well, absolute nonsense. Absolute nonsense. I've said this before. The amount of atheists I've had debates with, and I always enjoy debates because I like a good argument. I find it absolutely fascinating that you don't even have to go down the argument of why, because I had one recently with someone and they brought up the Big Bang and I thought, oh, fantastic, the Big Bang. And he goes, yeah, well, the Big Bang disproves your point of view in Genesis. And I says, no, it doesn't. I says, the Big Bang doesn't disprove anything. In fact, if anything, the Big Bang actually corroborates what I believe, because the Big Bang tells you that the universe is expanding. And at one point, if you take that expansion, we take it back to a singularity. That singularity was nothingness, according to you. And something happened to bring nothingness into creation. Well, I know what that is. God spoke. And he didn't have an answer, because there is no answer whenever you're just taking it down that route. It leads to nothingness, it leads to tohu. But if you understand that it is God who, in Genesis 1, it tells us that the earth was without form and void, and God spoke. It says the Spirit hovered over the waters and God spoke. Well, what did God speak? He spoke order out of chaos. He spoke order out of nothingness. So the Bible explains it. But people will mock you for your faith. People will mock you because you believe in Jesus. I think we need to be like Peter, where we go, hold on a minute. We are not to be caught off guard. We're to have an answer for every question. We're to have something there in terms to be able to respond to the questioning of our faith. Okay, guys. I think I've spoken enough. So I'll take some questions now. Did what I say tonight make sense to people? That's what I want to know. I know sometimes I get carried away and I think everybody knows, what I'm talking about. So if you miss something, you'd probably have to go back to the start to look. But I was going to say, where are my glasses? But if you got something, do me a favor, hit one or let me know. That would be great. Okay. Jason Garza said, I think the red horse of war in Revelation is World War III. Do you think Russia will give up Ukraine war to save resources to attack Israel, as described in Ezekiel 38:39? Also, who God was speaking with in Genesis 1:26 about making man in his image came up last night in Asaph Bible study. Okay, second question first, right? When he talks about making man in his image, there are many, and the traditional view is that he is talking amongst the Godhead. I kind of lean to the Dr. Michael Heiser view, that he is actually talking about the spirit element of man, right? And he is talking to what would be seen as the council of God in Psalm 82. It would be the council. So yes, it is the Godhead speaking, but it is not the Godhead speaking to itself. This is what Dr. Michael Heiser puts out. I actually agree with him, right? Others will just say this is the Father speaking to the Son and speaking to the Holy Spirit. I believe it's the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit as the Godhead speaking to the B'nai Elohim, saying we will make man in our image. And it's talking about the image as in the B'Tselem Elohim, the image of God, right? In terms of God as spirit. So we'll have this spirit and we'll contain him within the flesh, and he will have the soul as well. So spirit, soul, and body, 1 Thessalonians 5. So that's the second part of the question. Let's get back to the first, right? Okay, the red horse of war being World War III. Do you think Russia will give up Ukraine? Okay, I don't think Russia will give up the Ukraine war. I think Russia will to some degree finish the Ukraine war. What I would think of is, although the Western societies and certain nations are pouring into Ukraine to make Ukraine a testing ground for new technology, I think this is all leading up to WW3. Now, I also think that we are already in WW3 in terms of proxy wars. So if we take Cambodia and Thailand today, Cambodia's approach to Thailand and the continuation of war because Cambodia are acting as a proxy of China, right, on this aspect. And the same with Ukraine. Ukraine is basically a proxy of NATO. They're not NATO, but they're a proxy of NATO to actually bring this war in. And I think what will happen is, at the minute, Ukraine, we know, has opened itself up as a testing bed for all the technology of weapons manufacturers around the world. He says, come to our country, test out your weapons, give us your weapons, we'll test them, give us the robot dogs, give us the new attack drones, give us all of this, and we'll test them. And I think once the testing is over and the skirmishes break out, and remember, it's not by chance, because all of these countries have for some reason, signaled 2027 as a potential for, I'm talking about Europe, for major ground war with Russia. So I think that what will happen is it'll be a case, if that breaks out, there's no longer any help for Ukraine. Russia conquers Ukraine because there's no way Ukraine can win specifically on their own. And I think the after effects of war, in terms of what the actual physical cost in terms of economy and all of that has been upon Russia, will provoke Russia to go to Israel, because Israel, like Israel has been blessed as such a small nation with great wealth, right? And great technology. And I think that when you talk about the Leviathan field, I think it'll become too much of a temptation for Russia and their allies, Turkey and Iran specifically, not to go and attack. And that's Ezekiel 38 coming in. Vindog, I said, did you read the article about Brits being possibly restricted from going on holiday? I didn't, but I am aware, Vin, about certain aspects coming in. So, with the digital IDs, there's certainly we're certainly opening ourselves up to major restriction. Also, I think it'll be dependent on where we go on holiday. You know, where we go. Like I all I can say, I was in Italy there. I was in Italy a few weeks ago, and one of the things my wife and I noticed is that when you're going through the airports now, the digital ID is in place. The restrictions are very plain to see, that you go through, what pops up is you and all your details when the computer screen scans you, so that there already is a DID. In terms of restriction, I would say that the restrictions would possibly, I'm not sure of the article that you're talking about, but I would say that the restrictions will possibly come in going further afield from Europe, because under Keir Starmer, one of the things that I've noticed is that the cozying up to Europe has been to sycophant levels. It's disgusting. It's ridiculous. Now, in terms of restriction, I think the restriction will start to be put on people in as the closer we get to 2030. I think the closer we get to 2030, restricting the movement is going to be key to their control. And whether that's through your ID, or whether that's saying you don't have enough money in the bank to facilitate you being in this place for this long. We already know that certain things have come to play in terms of, in Europe right now, under Ursula von der Leyen, there was this in action, I think it was about a year ago, that you could only have something like 300 euros in cash. Anything more than that would necessitate some sort of government involvement. And I think everything's still going in that direction. It hasn't eased in my view. Okay, I'm disappearing and coming back. So hopefully you've got me. Hopefully you're still there. So I'll carry on with the questions. I don't know what happened there, but this happened last week when I started answering questions too. Um, Jared has asked, are there two parts to the Ezekiel war and when will they take place? There are two Ezekiel, no, that's not true. There are two wars of Gog and Magog, right? Um, one is pre-tribulation, doesn't necessarily have to be pre-rapture. Um, one is post, so one is at the end of the tribulation. One is at the and that's I think Revelation. I think from memory, Revelation 19. Now, in that context, we've talked about Gog and Magog before. So Gog, according to the Septuagint, Amos 7 verse 1, tells you that he was um, the king of, I think he's referred to as the king of the king caterpillar. Also, he's referred to as the king of the locusts, which reflects him as a spiritual entity, a principality. So we would say Gog right now could be the leader of Russia. Maybe not the current leader, but I think it probably is. Right? I'm not saying it is, but it could be. I think we're that close. But that's not him himself. Gog is a spirit, a spiritual entity according to the Septuagint, right? He is this spiritual principality. So although that battle gets taken out and finished pre-tribulation, there will be a battle at the end after the tribulation, and in that battle, it will be the return of this spirit. It will be the return of this entity, this principality of hell. In certain circles, definitely in the medieval sort of theological outlook, you would see Gog as a prince of hell. And Heather's asked, when Gog attacks, in Ezekiel 38 and 39, when Gog attacks Israel, where nuclear is used, Israel will for 7 years clean up the land. When is this? Is this during the tribulation year? I don't particularly, some people will attribute the 7 and the 7. So that Ezekiel 38 happens, and then there's a 7 year cleanup period. Primarily, the theory is because they believe that this is the nuclear fallout. Might not be, right? But if it is, I still don't believe that is the tribulation point. And the reason I don't believe it's a tribulation point is I look at what the effects of those wars will be, right? So Psalm 83 deals with the inner circle, according to Zechariah 12, that come against Israel. So that would be Hamas, Hezbollah, that would be the surrounding circle, that would be the Houthis and so on, right? When we get to Ezekiel 38, the nations that are involved, probably bar Russia, the main nations in the alliance are known for Islamic fundamentalism, okay? And they are dealt with by the hand of God during Ezekiel 38. So as God deals with them, then yes, you have this 7 year cleanup period afterwards, but I don't believe that you have an instantaneous individual come on the scene and unite the world. I think that there is something that, in other words, I'm basically saying I think that there's some gap in between in between Ezekiel 38 and the beginning of the tribulation, and what that gap will be the affirming of the covenant of Daniel 9:27, and as that affirmation happens, I believe that there's going to have to be a rejigging, a reshaping to some degree. So fundamentalist, let's say radical Islam, will be done away with to a large extent during that. Now, this then correlates with the Islamic teachings when we talk about the Mahdi and the Dajjal, right? So the Mahdi, he will be, according to the Islamic teaching, the one who garners this end time treaty, and then he breaks the treaty. However, I cannot see, if radical Islam has dealt such a blow in Ezekiel 38 and 39, which will be, I can't see the Mahdi having support or strength there. However, if we take a small gap where things get sewn in, where there's an individual comes on the scene, makes a treaty, and as he makes the treaty, he is seen like the guy who unites everything. So the Jews like him, the Islamists who are left like him, the secularists like him. The world garners around him, like John 5:46 tells us that they'll run to him. And then when he breaks the treaty, I think what happens is to those kind of more secular Islamists, they become radicalized because they look at him and say, that's our Mahdi. So that's my theory anyway. I don't see it as the 7 year tribulation. I think that there's a small gap. I don't know if the gap is a year, 2 years, or whatever, but I think there's a gap that will be the affirmation of the treaty. Now that does not mean we do not see a treaty in place, because Daniel 9:27 is the affirming of the treaty, the affirming of something that is already in existence. So when we start to see treaties come to the fore now and think, oh look, they're looking at this, they're looking at that, I'm not interested if they're 7 years long. Why? Because it can't be the Antichrist. The Antichrist cannot come until the fall. Until we start to see that First Thessalonians or Second Thessalonians time frame set up, and that would be the rapture happening. So I don't see the 7 year system being in place during Ezekiel 38 cleanup. That's my long-winded answer. Sorry. Um, Okay, Christina said, when the Bible describes nations and ethnicities coming against one another, could this be the borders invasion going on worldwide now? Nations are being torn apart by different religions. Yes. So the term in Matthew 24 is ethnos versus ethnos, right? So yes, I believe it is. I believe it will be. I believe that what we're seeing is, and we saw this in 2020 with the rise of the BLM movement. The BLM movement had been about for years, but it went worldwide. Where over here in Northern Ireland, we had BLM protests, and we had people, attacking statues and things like that. However, now with mass migration, open borders, and this is why I think that there is a purpose behind the madness. I believe that the Amim, the elite sort of people, those of esoteric knowledge who have looked for divination and looked for whatever, have come to this idea that they can break down society and reconstruct society by, the Build Back Better thing, but by opening the borders and causing, like if you take the UK alone, the two-tier system in the UK, all it does is further divide and isolate. And it is an age-old agenda at play. I've taught on this. It's called Divide e Imperia. It means divide and rule. So you go back to Julius Caesar. He partook in this. You go back to Genghis Khan and the Mongols. They did this, right? You go back to British rule in India. They did this. The British had this down to a T, right? So they turned the Muslims and the Hindus against each other, and they spread rumors against each other. And when they were fighting against each other, it made them much easier to rule. So if everybody's fighting and they sow the divisions, and that's the purpose, I believe, of two-tier justice, two-tier legal system, two-tier this, that, and the other. And I may get flagged now with this online safety bill for saying two-tier, but again, that's what it is. They create a two-tier system so that you become now angry at the person in front of you rather than the elites who are enacting this system. And I believe that's why ethnos will rise against ethnos. Um, God bless us, everyone, says Pastor Mckibben, when one tells the devil, I rebuke you, at a guest in one's own home and the visitors being demonically inspired, can it be expected for my guest to attempt to strike me? I'm not 100% sure of what the question is asking. Is this an encounter that you've had? I'd need more context in this, and if any of the moderators see the context come up, just send it to me. Um, Annette has asked, can I share a video on Project Looking Glass? There are plenty. I'm not sure. I tend not to be one who looks at like videos so much. I tend to read. But there are plenty online. So not Operation Looking Glass, just on YouTube. Don't type if you type in Operation Looking Glass, that is a legitimate, open out there naval. That was a response to the nuclear as a nuclear deterrent to always have a ship in or a plane in the air as a nuclear deterrent. Excuse me. But Project Looking Glass. I'm not sure what documentaries are good, to be honest. So I just say it'll definitely be on YouTube or Rumble or one or the other ones. But I'll have a look. But I'm not sure which are good. Gasby says Psalm 2, God issues a warning to the kings and the rulers, yet in verse 10 he extends an invitation to peace. Do you believe that this invitation will have any impact during Revelation 19:19? I I personally see the invitation to peace as preceding the tribulation. So I believe the invitation to peace is that the people are plotting in vain. So this is where we're at now. So I believe Psalm 2 is where we're one of the things, one of the many convergences that we're seeing. And I believe the invitation to peace is based on God being a merciful God and not wishing that any should perish, but all should come to the knowledge of him through his son, Jesus Christ. So I think the invitation of peace is open politically for people. So in other words, in this turning against Israel scenario, I think that there's an open chance for every nation to see the truth, right? I don't understand how they can, but to see, so God will make it abundantly clear so man is left without excuse. I don't see it as being something that um, I don't see it as being something tribulation at the tribulation or post tribulation, but rather more now. Um, Emmaus Road Productions has asked, do you think the nations rage because they know they lost and they are just trying to take as many humans down as possible because that is the only way they can hurt God? Um, yeah, pretty much. So I think I would look at the agenda of the enemy is to hurt God. So if that scripture I just quoted there, that his the heart of God is that none should perish and all should come to the knowledge of him. Well, how does the devil seek to hurt God? And he sees that as a victory. It's by causing more of his people to turn, more of the people that he created, more of mankind to turn away from him. And I think we're living in a generation that has never been so far from submission to God, so far from a relationship with Jesus, so far, like you talk, like if you talk to people on the street, and we do, right, when we witness to people, you have to be prepared in these days to be hated for witnessing to people. You have to be prepared to be hated and cursed at and spat at and all that. You have to be. And I think every time you see that, it's a little glimpse into, in a minuscule scale, what God must feel. Like even put it this way, right? Revelation 3:20 says that, and this is talking to the church, the lukewarm church, the age that we're in right now, that Jesus stands at the door and knocks. If any man open the door, he will come in and dine with him. How many Christians today confess Christianity but won't attend church, or attend church every now and then? I call them creasters, people who attend at Christmas and Easter, or I remember talking to a friend who has a massive church in America, and he says that the average American attends church once every 5 weeks. Now, for me, I find that heartbreaking. And it's not a legalistic thing. But look, I would struggle to go 5 weeks without seeing my wife. And if I'm in love with God, I would absolutely struggle to spend. Now, I'm not saying that you can't experience God in your walk in your life. Of course you can. But this is why Hebrews 10:25 is so significant. Look, Hebrews 10:25 says, "As you see in the day and the hour of the Lord approach, do not," so it's emphatic, "forsake the gathering of the brethren." Now, as a pastor, I can tell you it doesn't mean anything to me if the pews are filled or the pews are empty. Where it hurts is I get that glimpse and I go, Lord, I'm sorry, if we were to all, like, if everybody attends, everybody comes together, we're coming to you, we're coming for you, we're coming to worship before your throne. And I don't know, maybe it's the way I think, maybe I think it's wrong, but I just look at that and I think, how heartbreaking is it for God when he sees his people apathetic about him? And people will go, well, you're being legalistic. I promise you, I'm not being legalistic. I'm not. I'm saying this is a heart's desire. So many people will never miss a meeting with their friends, a doctor's appointment. They'll not miss work. But in this age, when you see everything tumbling down around you, they will miss the gathering. And again, means nothing to the leadership or the pastor that way. It's not about, but it is heartbreaking whenever you think, God, if your people turned up for you, because you've always turned up for us. So I don't know how I went down that route, but what was the question again? Um, yeah, it was about hurting God, and I think that's the thing, is that the apathy in people is to hurt God, and how they do that is to sowing an atmosphere that your Christian walk can be dialed in. It really can't, and wherever I've dialed it in, Lord, I repent. Wherever I have missed it and just thought, you know what, I'll get to reading my Bible rather than actually getting up. We've all done it, but I'm saying we should be so ridiculously hungry to spend time with God. And I personally believe that the church, the pulpit, has done a disservice for this, because the pulpit has taught Christians that Christianity is about them. It's about the answer to their prayer. It's about uh, how you feel. Are you too tired? Are you doing something? Are you going through? It's not. It's about Him. Everything is about Him. And if you get that paradigm shift where you realize everything is about Him, that's when all of those little things that come against you don't have the same impact, because today's about Him. Tomorrow's about Him. And I just think, like, have you ever read the book of Hosea? Right, the book of Hosea, beautiful book. But Hosea marries Gomer, and this is done by God. God orchestrates this so that Hosea feels the heart of God. Gomer is an adulteress, right? She cheats on Hosea, and she doesn't like just cheat once. She continually cheats. And this is God showing his heart to the prophet Hosea. And God bless Hosea for having to go through that. But God is wanting him to have an inkling of what he feels when he looks at his people. That his people profess love for him, but then they'd rather be about the things of the flesh than, yeah, I'm going down a route. Sorry. Um, Joy in the Morning says, can dark symbols evolve into positive symbols like the Star of David? So symbols like let me put it this way: symbols are based on the power that you give to them, right? Now, so there's things like sigils. Uh, the Star of David can be included within the Lesser Key of Solomon. I don't know why I took a blank there. It can be so the same as the eight-sided Star of Islam is included within the Lesser Key of Solomon. So if you're not sure what the Lesser Key of Solomon is, it's a grimoire, right? So it's a book. Not sure of the origins, but we do know that the last editor of the book was Aleister Crowley. Um, the last contributor to the book was the head of the order, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, William Mathers, and the book was all detailed about this Gnostic belief that was also rooted in Quranic belief that Solomon was able to control demons, and he was able to control specifically the number 72, 72 demons, 72 nations. He was able to control these through the different spells and stuff in this book. So it's adopted by witchcraft and it's adopted by all of these things. Now, in terms of the Star of David, the Star of David was pushed upon the Jewish people. So what people, when we talk about the yellow star, when we talk about the star of identification that was given to them, yes, it had come out of the 17th century and it had come out of Middle Eastern Europe, and it had come out of there, and it did have sort of occultish beliefs. But that's not the weight that was behind it. It was seen as the Tajan of David. It was seen as the shield of David, just like you have the shield of Abraham. It was seen as a defense. So they were labeled in this way during the Holocaust, but then they decided to turn it around and adopt it for themselves, and in that way redeem a symbol. And then yes, you can redeem a symbol. You can redeem many things. The enemy tries to claim authority over so much, but God looks to redeem it. Um, I don't think you should ever put weight on symbols or anything like that. But again, when I'm looking at the Israeli nation are a secular nation. There's only 25% that consider themselves religious, so it's 75% that are non-religious, a-religious, right? And within that, when they're taking that symbol, they're taking it as a symbol of national identity and pride. They're not taking it from an esoteric belief. They're not taking it from an occult belief. But does it have occult origins? It certainly has an occult background. There are arguments among certain rabbis as to whether it has full occult origins or whether it is actually the shield of David that was representative in certainly the Talmud. I can't give you the answer for that. All I will say is that I don't put my weight in any symbols, but I do think that the secular nation of Israel redeemed the symbol that was placed upon them in terms of the star to identify them during the Holocaust, and they've redeemed that. Thank you, Emma. Really appreciate that. I really appreciate anybody that supports this ministry. You're an absolute blessing for doing so. Um, so I don't know. Was that the last one? Was that the last question? Hold on. Nope, it's not. Okay, so Pierce the Veil. Do you know what I'm going to do? I'm not going to answer that last question. Um, if you can send me a message so I can do a full video on it, that would be easier, right? In fact, yeah, because I'm on the because we're in a sort of a series right now in church called Secret Agendas. I'm not going to answer the question now because I'm probably going to use some of that content for, if you don't mind, for some of my Sunday services. So I have friends that don't believe pre-tribulation, but I love them with some debate. I have friends. Listen, I'm a pre-tribulation believer. I'm premillennial. And I have friends who are mid, I have friends who are post, and my general reaction to them is the same. I will not fall out with you over this. It's not a salvation issue. I'll just keep you a seat when I get to the wedding supper. So the wedding supper, the end of our time before we come back in Revelation 19 with Christ. Oh, I just fell. Um, I just my thing is, I'll keep you a seat. You can tell me what the tribulation was like, and I'll tell you what I had for dinner. But I don't think. I think the thing is that the church has become extremely divisive. Um, yeah, it's very good point, Julie. We have a 6 pointed star in terms of, and there's stars on a lot of different flags. The thing is that if it's on an Israeli flag, people are looking for something, and they're looking to call something out. In my opinion, see, blessed. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Um, so whenever you look at all of this stuff, I think it's very plain to see if you look at this with the Psalm 2 verse 1. You can let me know. I'm not going to teach again, but do you let me know? Do you think this is now? Are the nations raging? The secular nations, the goyim, right? The non-Jewish nations, and are they plotting a vain thing? I think they are. I think they are. Most of my Messianic Jewish Christian friends are mid-trib, but I still enjoy their fellowship and many times teaching. Yeah, I have. I have individuals who are friends who are mid-trib. There was a Messianic rabbi friend of mine and he's mid-tribulation, but we didn't differ off the timing of where we're at now. No, we just differed of the timing of our departure, and I think that I'm not getting it. Whether if you don't believe in a pre-tribulation rapture, I'm still going to love you, and I would like to think because I don't believe in a mid or a post that you still love me. Um, so I think that that's the thing. I think Christians are very much getting into this tribalism. But if you remember Divide et Imperia, the divide and rule agenda, it's happening within the church. It's massively happening within the church. You know, oh, I don't like you because you teach prophecy. I get that all the time, right? I don't like all the prophecy stuff. But listen, I don't teach prophecy without hope. Because I don't see the prophecy as something to, I don't see the prophetic fulfillment of the Bible as something to worry about if you know Jesus Christ. I see it as something to shout from the rooftops like a watchman on the wall. Um, and it grieves me when I look at the church so divided. It grieves me when I look at the apathy within the church globally. And it grieves me whenever I think about how my father must feel when he looks at his body. Thank you, Susan. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Um, how must God feel when he looks at the body of Christ today? You know, it's, I don't know, I find it heartbreaking. Maybe it's just me, but I just, I just find it heartbreaking that, the body of Christ, listen, so many people will attend a concert, praise like mad within the body of Christ, but when it comes to a worship service or a church service, they don't want to engage. We should be freer in front of our Father than we are in front of people. Anyway, I could keep going on and on, so I apologize. Join us tomorrow for a Bible study. We're on the sin offering. which again will probably tie in a little bit with today. And if you're in the Belfast area, if you're around Victory Church this Sunday, we're having a barbecue. So we have a Sunday barbecue, and you need to come along, be fed, have a load of fellowship. It'll be a great laugh. It'll be a great fun. Thank you, C Blessed. I really appreciate that. And at the same time, pray for me, because I know that it will be like likes of red meat, and I can't eat red meat anymore because of a condition I have. But I know that I will. My flesh is weak. I miss burgers. I miss steak, but I will be in pain after it. So please do me a favor. Please pray for me. Please pray that I can have a burger with no repercussions. And join us tomorrow night for Bible study. And guys, listen, I just want to say, see for everybody on this channel, see for everybody who tunes in each week, who watches, you're all part of this body. We're all a family, and I really appreciate each and every one of you. I call you the head and not the tail, above and not beneath, kings, queens, and priests in Jesus' mighty name. Remember, you can do all things through Christ who strengthens you. Guys, God bless. I will see you tomorrow. And don't forget, barbecue, if you're in the Belfast area, this Sunday. It will probably rain. Well, who knows? I don't know. But guys, God bless. Oh, let me just say that first. Hammer time, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Guys, God bless. I will see you all tomorrow night for Bible study. Guys, God bless.